Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our guests from the FEI.
Thank you very much, and big thank you to Terry, Tim, Laura also for all the work in setting this forum up. I really hope we won't have to wait another 15 years for the next one. I may be retired by then, because we'd love to come back. So now I'll do a presentation on, this more rules and, sometimes a bit stingy stuff from the FEI. I hope I can keep it lively for you and interesting. And of course, don't hesitate to ask questions if you have any. Oh, it's not showing how I wanted it to show. Sorry, I'll go back. Technology is always a little bit of a, oops. There we go. So I'll just give you a brief update on the main rule changes in dressage and para-dressage for this year. I'll talk a bit about NF engagement, as this was also discussed a little bit yesterday, so I can explain to you how you can get even more involved in rule changes and different things with the FEI. Update you on a few new legal procedures that we've put in place this year as well, on the major projects we are running, mainly in our department covering dressage, para-dressage, reining and vaulting. And I also will run you through the dressage judging working group recommendations. There are 19 of them. I won't take you through all the details of it, and you can read them also on the FEI website, but just highlight the main ones just to explain a bit the work we are into now. And I will finish up with an update on Tokyo 2020. So first, to start off with the dressage rules update for 2020. One of the main ones is that we try to no longer repeat rules that come from vet regulations or general regulations into the sports rules. Because often what we found in the past is that one was changed in one and then forgot to be changed the other, and so confusion was there. So this is one general thing we try to do. And of course, if you come across some which are not changed yet, please flag them to us. It's always the same with rules. You can have, I don't know how many people read them at least 100 times. There's always the little thing you have missed. So there. And also what we've done is all the use rules, they were all in annexes at the end of the rules, if you remember. We've now brought them into the main rule pages. Because what we found also, the use rules, they had initially separate pony rules, separate rules for children. They were all brought into the discipline rules, but not really harmonized. So we've tried to harmonize those as well. Talking about use, there's been a lot of amendments to the rules last year in terms of saddlery and equipment rules. Probably you've seen that as well. We used to have an equipment working group where we got a lot of requests for different tack and equipment to be approved separately, and a very short rule on bits and saddlery. And at some point I thought, this cannot be right. If we have a very short rule and then we have pages and pages and pages of what is allowed and not allowed, means probably we have to work on the rule, and that's what we've done. So now we have a much more detailed and longer rule on saddlery, on bits, but the goal is, we're still working on it, of course, and it's still in progress, but ultimately the goal of this is that everything that is described in this rule is permitted, and anything which is not won't be. But we don't need to go through approval of all different bits, because also in the industry, they get more and more inventive in what they can come up with in terms of bits. So it's hard to follow. So what we will still be working on, and that's the projects I would like to really focus on this year and the next year as well, is to come up with a much more scientific-based approach to that. And Roy also touched on it, and actually we were together at the presentation of Rachel Murray last year, where yes, bridle fitting is very important as well. And I was also fortunate 2 months ago to go to a presentation by an equine dentist, and also about the whole importance of good dentists care for the horses and the influence of that also on the whole performance of the horse. So I think when we can put all these scientific researchers and people together as well, and that we can come with an evidence-based rules which explain the leverage and the use of all the different kind of bits, that will be very helpful, I hope, for the sport in the future. So coming back to the rule changes here, what we had last year is that we allow now snaffles up to CDI 1 and 2 and 3 style also for use. And actually we had an oversight on the rules because for the use classes, snaffles were allowed but not at championships. And it's not very logical to allow them to compete in a snaffle and suddenly have to go into bridle at championship. So now they allowed in a snaffle in championships as well. The blood rule. This is always a very interesting rule here. There's been quite a major change this year, and I think it's important just to point it out to you. The vet committee has been looking into this really thoroughly as well, and actually at the equipment test when the horses go out of the arena, if blood is found in the mouth or at the spurs, that's clear elimination as per the rule. But if blood is found anywhere else on the horse, it's no longer a clear elimination. The reason for that is that if there's blood found on one of the legs or limbs, you cannot prove that it happened during the test. It might have happened when the horse was walking out of the arena. So we give the credit to the athletes. And what will happen there is that the steward has to call a vet. The vet will decide if the horse is fit to compete the next day or not. If it's not, it won't be able to compete, but the horse will keep the results of the test of that day. And if it's fine because it's a minor injury, then it can go on and compete. So I think that's an important rule now to be aware of. Judges Supervisory Panel. This is a system that has proven to work really well at Olympic Games and championships, and I'm sure the judges present here will agree on that. And now we also have decided to allow it at all other levels. There's more work going to be done on this and more ideas coming here also, because we also understand that for organizers it's not always easy to hire even more officials. But with the committee we're working on ways and possibilities also to make it more affordable for all the levels of shows. I'll touch now on a few of the para-dressage rules updates for 2020. In the freestyle tests, here, when a rider has two horses, in the past they were not allowed to choose which horse they would take in the freestyle if both horses were qualified, which they will now be allowed to do. That's one of the changes. And also for the freestyle, we want to put it more open to athletes to be able to compete as much as possible when they go to CPDIs, 1 and 2 stars as well. So now they all may participate in the freestyle. There's a lot of research, I'll talk about it a bit later, also on compensating aids. And there's here, it's very detailed, and probably Emma or Ferdinando also will be much more aware of all of this here. But requests for profile-specific compensating aids can be made to the FEI or to the chief classifier now at an event. Sometimes athletes get to the event and we're used to compete with something, so they can make a request at the event for it to be approved. But of course, when athletes use compensating aids, it's also their responsibility to make sure that they are approved in advance. Because we've had cases also where they came to an event and were not aware of it. And it's always a very difficult task to have it approved just at that moment. So athletes must make sure also basically they know the rules. And they know the rules on which ones are on the master list and automatically that they can compete with them, or the others that they need to ask for permission. Championships. So here's two things we've changed into the para-dressage rules. What we found is that often when we have multidiscipline championships, there's a lot of accommodation, travel is often granted to the jumping athletes, dressage athletes. And as per the rules, they were not for the other disciplines, including also, well, not only para-dressage, vaulting, reining, or driving. The reason for that also is that championships for these disciplines often are, more costly for organizers to put together because there's less sponsorship. However, we now want to also help a bit more the athletes competing in all these other disciplines. So when there's a multidiscipline championship, like there are world championships now, or more and more European, they must get similar conditions to the other athletes. Not prize money yet, I'm afraid. Everybody dreams of the jumping prize money others, but we, slowly getting there. The formats, especially in para-dressage, probably some of you know that the Paralympic formats has changed in the sense that the team test is ridden only by the team members. So some athletes go to a championship, do the first individual test, cannot do the team test, and are not qualified for freestyle. So they go home again, having ridden only one test. There's no change for the Paralympic rules, but we have changed the Continental and World Championship rules in the sense that now all the athletes, like before, will compete in the individual test and the team test, and both will count as qualification for the freestyle. Yes?
Before we go on, okay. So you mean that for championships, I don't need to choose the team or I still need to?
You still need to choose the team, but all the athletes will ride in the team test. We still have the team competition separately, so it counts as a second qualifier.
Yeah.
So these were just in summary the rules revisions. So just that you know now also there's a new principle in the FEI is that the sports rules should only change or have a full revision every 4 years. Because we came into a system where there were rule changes every year and everybody got lost in them. So I think it's a good decision to come back to what we had years ago. But of course, if there are smaller changes who go in the sense of horse welfare, athlete welfare, we can make them, but not changes for the sake of changes. So the next full rule revision for dressage and para-dressage will take place in 2021 and will be effective in 2022. Initially, we wanted to do it this year, but then we realized that, of course, all the federations will be busy with the Olympics and Paralympics in the summer, so it's a bit much to ask them to, at the same time, concentrate on all the rule changes that are proposed in the procedure, so we've postponed it by 1 year. So just that you know, the whole rule revision process works the following way as it's written here. Until the 1st of March, national federations can propose new rules to the FEI and send them to us. And then they go to the different technical committees who review them and come up also with their own proposal of rule changes, which then are published early July for revision by all the federations. And usually they have until end of August to come back to us with comments on each of them. And then we work on them again, and then we publish the final draft of the rule changes end of October, ahead of where they'll be voted at the General Assembly in November. So the reason why I explain this to you is that you can all, through your federation, make proposals also. Of course, you should not just send anything and maybe put it together in a constructive way and with the reasons why you want to change them, but we really like to encourage NF engagement and all stakeholders engagement in these procedures. It's your rules, you vote on them, you have to work with them. So please, it's not just the FEI deciding on things, sometimes yes, but for a reason, because maybe we have more the overall view on the disciplines, but we need your input in it. So please never be shy to do so and just don't hesitate to share them with us. Now I go to the changes in the legal processes for 2020. There are new administrative disciplinary procedures. So actually, what is it? The whole goal of this procedure is to just simplify the systems. Sometimes we try. It's not always easy. But I mean, now any minor offenses, and they will be listed just after, will be dealt with by the FEI legal department. This will make it much faster instead of having to go every time to a FEI tribunal. So what do we call minor offenses? They will all have a maximum sanction of a formal warning or a fine not exceeding 2,000 Swiss francs, provisional suspensions or suspensions not exceeding 3 months, demotion of officials, or removal of an official from a specific event when something really major happens. So actually, whenever there's one of those minor offenses that occurs, the person responsible for the offense will be informed of it, and then they can straight accept the offense and the sanction going with it, or they can deny it and then it will be dealt again by the FEI legal, or they can also, of course, always choose to go directly to the FEI tribunal. So there are choices with this, but there's this fast-track procedure now in place. And I will just also go through a bit of details how legal procedures happen on site, because we do understand often, and also that's for the teams, for the chef d'équipe, and also for the officials, it's never easy to know exactly what is the right decision to do, what you can protest, what you cannot. So there's much more guidance on that also on the FEI website. But basically, on-site matters usually should first go to the ground jury, and then off-site matters will then go to HQ, tribunal, or eventually to CAS. All protest challenges, and the big change also, this year, is that there's no longer an appeal committee at events or championships, except at Olympic Games, where the FEI tribunal will be there as appeal. So the reason for that also is that we found often that protests were dealt with by the ground jury, and the appeals were done often for the sake of making an appeal. Just to, say to the team, yes, we've made the effort, but it very rarely changed the things. So now the appeals will go directly to the FEI or to the FEI tribunal. So just to help you a little bit in this process here, you have a list of what can be protested and what cannot. That's also, of course, listed in detail in the general regulations. Eligibility of horse athlete conditions or conditions of the arena, an issue at the horse inspection, for instance, that can warrant protests. Here it's more in jumping, of course, obstacle, plan, length of course, which is not correct. Or I don't know if you remember, but in 2010 in Lexington, I think the arena of the para-dressage was missing a few meters, and it's actually a blind rider who realized that. So it can happen. Irregularity incidents during competitions or results, and procedures in application of implementing of a rule. What is not protestable is the effective marks or results given during a test or a pole done in jumping, for instance. An elimination or disqualification of a horse for veterinary reasons, or like for blood reasons. An elimination, disqualification of an athlete for medical reasons, that's final decision, and the issuing of a yellow warning card that cannot be protested. Just also for the record, a protest must be made in writing, very important, within 30 minutes of the publication of the official results to the ground jury. Everything in writing, dated, timed. You also have to make a deposit of 150 Swiss francs, but only when you've done all of that, your protest is valid. So it's really important to put it all in writing. I will now go on to the Dressage and Para-Dressage current main projects that we are working on. Of course, everybody knows, and it's used here, the paperless judging, IT procedures. We have launched more than a year ago a very big research on classification in para, and as I mentioned before, the tech and equipment review, which is now turned into a quite big project. So the first thing, both in the dressage and para-dressage rules, we've now added an article to allow for paperless judging at all levels. Doesn't mean all shows have to use it, but now it means that all shows can use it. So that's one of the changes. And as you just mentioned, in the future, it's in the rules now already because we are in the process of it, at some point only FEI-approved paperless judging systems will be allowed to be used. The reason for that is to protect the athletes, the systems, and the officials as well. Because in the modern world, if you have e-dressage, put up by anybody, you always have the risk that people can maybe get into the system, change marks, or do things like that. So we need to really enforce a big security system here. And that's why now only FEI-approved paperless judgings will be allowed. What we also always encourage at any event is to always have a paper backup. Anything can happen, a breakdown of the internet or anything else. So always have papers on the judges' tables or judges' huts, just in case. The goal also is that all the marks for the athletes and also all the marks that the judges gave are already available, but will be available through the FEI platform. So we are working with Black Horse One, Daniel Golan, probably most of you know also, to make this work so that in the end, with the login of the athletes, of the login of the officials, they will be able to access any of the marks they've given that shows in the past, current or the past. So that's what we are now working on as well. And the access to all these pages, of course, for the athletes is strictly personal. So just to go back what we mentioned before, the IT department have now launched an IT scoring provider certification procedures. I don't know if you realized in the draft schedules that the IT scoring paragraph has changed slightly. For the moment, if it's a non-approved, you just put a cross using a non-approved one, but slowly but surely we come to a longer list of approved systems for scoring and for paperless judging. So the IT have published guidelines for paperless judging systems to show them exactly what they must be able to enforce as security measures to protect it. So it's quite an extensive list and detailed list on there. And we have also issued a table on the website that you can find of the minimum requirements at all levels, because of course we cannot ask an organizer of a low-level event to enforce similar security requirements than Olympic Games, because I'm not an expert at all in IT, but I seem to understand that the requirements for the higher levels are quite detailed and can be more costly. So as we really want to make paperless also there for all levels and for all the riders, we have put the minimum requirements for some level and higher requirements for championships and Olympic Games. So that's for the IT. I don't know if it has replied to your question fully, but yes, on the website you'll be able per discipline to click on the page where you see all the scoring offices that are now approved. It's in work, so they're not all there, but by the end of the year we hope to get them. I will now move on just to briefly touch upon the FEI classification research we've launched. So we're working with the University of Central Lancashire in the UK with Dr. Sarah Jane Hobbs, who reader in equine and human biomechanics. And we're also working with Hartbury on this huge research. Actually, the IPC has asked all of the sports to undergo a new classification research to make sure that we are correct in how we classify the athletes and in which grade we put them. We also have an FEI classification research reference group, so we often have meetings to go along this research. So initially the research, well, it still should be done in 3 years. We hope to have it done in 3 years, but it's a huge, huge undertaking. I will just run you through the few steps that we're going through. The first one is to specify different types of impairment that are eligible for para-equestrian. And of course, compared to other Paralympic sports, we have the horse, which makes it rather complicated to assess, and also very interesting, of course. So with that, we have to determine also the sport performance determinants for an athlete in para-dressage. The aim is to develop valid measures of impairment and standardize also with the sport-specific measures to assess performance. We, during this research, come across interesting discussions because, of course, we need to test and assess what type of impairments have as effects on the horse or not, and where also talent comes into play, what is possible for one athlete with a similar impairment and maybe more difficult for another one. And also when it comes to testing, we're trying to do some tests with a mechanical horse. But then, of course, the questions came, which type of saddle? Because athletes often have their proper fitted saddle, which doesn't always fit on the mechanical horse. So how do you really measure what's going on? So every time we have a new idea, we come into different walls and critical aspects that really, really make it very difficult. But we're getting there. And what I just saw yesterday, actually, the wheelchair tennis has asked us to help them in their research also, because I think that all the steps also that you see here have given, the IPC were really happy with the way we're moving forward with this. So other sports are coming to us to try and work it out. And what we've also tried to do a lot with the IPC is to open up a bit more this discussion between different sports. Before, it was impossible to share any research. And we said, why should we each do the same research and that we cannot share things? So the whole governance in the IPC has changed a lot in the past year, 2 years with the new president, and we're still working on it. Sabrina Biernes, our Secretary General, is also president of the newly created APSO, which is the regrouping of all the non-IPC sports. So now we have a much stronger voice within the IPC. And actually, in a few years' time, IPC won't manage their own sports anymore. They will all go back to the international federations. So there will be a more equal treatment of all the international sports in Paralympics. So all this research has really driven many, many different progress and different projects within here. So these are all the steps that we are undergoing, and hopefully we'll come up with a robust classification system which really proves that being in a grade with a specific impairment is there that you should be, and it's a fair level playing field for all the athletes in a similar grade. The other big projects that we're also undertaking, tech and equipment, I briefly touched upon it earlier here. So as I said before, changing the rules. Now we're working also on the other disciplines rules to go down the same line. We know also in jumping they don't really have tech and equipment rules. A lot is allowed there, so we're looking at to this also. I often got a comment from some of our legal colleagues saying, we don't understand why a bit is not permitted in one discipline for welfare reason and then is permitted in another one for, should be the same welfare reason. Well, it goes further than that, because often what you are doing with a horse in one discipline with one kind of equipment is different to what is done in another one. So the sporting performance is different too. So we really hope to have more scientific research behind that so that we can really explain, and also, as Rolly said before, bitless on a cross country is more dangerous than anything else for both the horse and the athletes. And to explain that, as he said before, to outside public is a real challenge that we're facing together with him as well. We're facing a lot of criticism, as always, also on social media. It's not easy to always answer to it, but the best we can do is come with scientific evidence on what is good or not and why. And that's what we're doing. And as I said before, also bridle and saddle fitting. I think in many of the levels, saddle fitting has always been there, but bridle fitting is equally important. And we are now working with Rachel Murray on research on that, which is really, really interesting. And as he said before, noseband tightness, yes, is not good, but all the rest together with it. And a noseband not tight at all is equally not good for the horse. So there's always, when you open one door, you find, I don't know how many doors behind it. So that's on our current projects. I will just go on to now just show you, let's change PowerPoint. The findings of the judging working group. As I said before, there are 19 of them. So just to summarize, the charge was given to the Dressage Judging Working Group back in 2016 by the FEI board to do a general evaluation of the system, current dressage system, to identify factors or practices in other subjectively judged sports. The lucky thing is that they decided to put all the subjectively judged equestrian sports under my department. So it has allowed us to work also together with vaulting and reining. What works in the one could work in the other or not. And then to make recommendations on the current FEI dressage judging system. The whole goal was not to completely change the way it's done, but maybe to offer different tools to make it work. These are the people who were on the who are still on the dressage judging working group members, chaired by Frank Camperman, who's also the chair of the dressage committee. Maribel Alonso, 5-star judge from Mexico. Richard Davison, Olympic rider. Kira Kirklund, she's an Olympic rider and trainer. David Stickland, he works at the CERN, so he was our brain and number person on the group, and myself. So after more than 2 years of discussions on this, we came with 19 recommendations that are focused on 4 major axes. One is revision of the judging system, technology, FEI high-level actions, and organizational changes. So these are those which are grouped under revision of the judging systems. You have the detail of the report published on the website if you want to go through it and read it. But basically, the number one that you can see here under observable, everything judged must be an explicit observable movement, something that you can see. The recommendation 2, or number 4 here, sorry, that the ranking should be a consequence of each mark, actually. Not where we want to put the horse compared to the others, but each mark is given to each movement and then results into a ranking. Then we have the cognition load is real and determines each judging performance. For this, we've also worked with a university, actually, who've come up with a study on the way the human brain works. And actually, if you look at what we require from the judges under the current system, and you look at all the documentation behind it, like the dressage handbook and the different guidelines and directives published on the website, it's huge knowledge that we ask from them. And of course, experience helps. Experience, makes the good judging, and there is very good judging. But the difficulty often is how to help new judges, younger judges, come up in the system also is a bit more simpler version. And what the study has also showed is that the human brain can really focus on 4 observables at a time in a short time frame. And whenever that gets overloaded, it automatically goes to further memory. So often it will go to, I remember a horse doing this like this, and it was a 6, so I'll give it a 6. But it's not necessarily what is really going on in front. But that's an auto-protection of the human brain. So seeing all of that, we are now also constructing a new code of points. I will discuss just later, based on that. So all of that has taken us to the number 10 code of points system. And no thresholds-based system also. This here was shown that corrections, when you take one mark and bring it back closer to all the others, is not always a fair system. Because the mark which is sometimes lower than the others is because the judge sitting at a certain point saw something that probably the others haven't seen. So that's also one of the aspects that we need to take into account in the judging. We've also looked at the high-low recommendations when trying to, cater for the differences here, which in all could be seen as the fairest system, but this was not pursued for now. And also we hope that the new code of points will, cater for everything here. Technology was also approached here. Of course, on presentation, and e-dressage is one of the results of using modern technology here. One of them is also, with the e-dressage, it allowed us to have a button when one judge sees blood on a horse, they can press the button, so it alerts the other judges, and they can check if they see it as well. Same for taco equipment things. So we try to really use technology as a help and as a support for the officials more and more, and look into different systems that can be used with this. The dashboard is another one. where all the judges can see where they are and how they perform compared to others. It's, as I said before, we have to carefully use such a tool because often, you know, if a judge is maybe further away from others, it's maybe experience, it's maybe sitting in a different position. So now what we're working on also is not only using statistics on that, but also to try and have videos together to really understand why the difference is there. And the hope also with this is that if we see that sometimes some of the officials maybe have an issue with judging walk, we can say, well, you need more education on walk because obviously there's something that, you know, is not quite right here, and that we can try and help them and support them in this long journey to become one day a 5-star judge, which I think is the goal of many. So that's more the technology-based one. What we call FEI high-level actions is, of course, the full code of point review. I'll discuss just later. And then in the future, now we're also reviewing the whole education system. We have an education system working group, and we want to closely link this to the development of the new code of points so that we can use it as a tool also for education. And we also have our new education director on board at the FEI. So I think many of you have seen the new exams, CS, English exam and everything now going on FEI campus. So that's a huge undertaking also that we are doing here in parallel onto all the officials' education. What you see under JAG here is actually what is currently the judging supervisory panel, and we also have a judge general. And the aim here is to create a new judging advisory group, which will include also the Judge General, because we've seen also that much more communication is needed between all these supervisors, and we don't want to call them supervisors anymore, but more advisors to all the officials. So there's on one side the work done at championships where they check the marks per movement, but I think one other very important aspect is also the whole education, and to be able to spot officials who maybe need some help or some education for them to be able to move forward. And so that's what we're working on here also with this new concept. In terms of what we put under organizational changes, it's here, you know, we found out also that the 7 judges at championships and games is something that works really well, is also fair to the athletes at that high level. So this is something we were asked by the board to review, and yes, we keep this, definitely. And then we've gone also further on what we call here judges' fitness. We require from the athletes and horses to be at the top level when they compete, and it's fair also that we help the judges to be at their top level of fitness when they judge. It's long hours, it's not always, you know, easy, you have to concentrate, as we said before, it's a lot of cognitive load for the judges. So we also want to make sure that there's a fair environment there and that the breaks are there as they need, that they can arrive when there's jet lag a bit earlier so that they are fit to judge when they have to judge. So those are all things that we're looking into. We've also redetermined the role of the judges. Their role is to give marks at what they see around the arena. But of course, when you're president, there are other roles also around it. So like for the legal procedures, the whole aim of this also is to make it more open, more directives in there, and help both the officials as well as the athletes in these different procedures. So I'll just now give a bit more information on the Code of Point, which is now really the big undertaking that we're working on now. So we've now have the full Grand Prix laid down as a Code of Point. And we worked on that, or a group worked on that with, of course, technical experts, dressage experts on this. And at the same time, there's always the university, KC, well, I'll get back to the name later, who works with that on us. So every time there's, and I'll show you what it looks like. This is not quite what it is today, but basically, for each movement in the Grand Prix, we tried really to determine 4 observables for each of the movements. And then from there to determine, and I can show it here, but you may take pictures, but please, this is not at all what it looks like today. This was the very first draft of it. But for instance, the whole goal is to take each move and say, what is a 10, what is a 9, what is an 8, 6, 7, and so on. And also the whole goal of the system is to say, we called it firewall, but we just decided to no longer call it a firewall. But in other words, one mistake in a movement should cost the same, be it a top rider or another rider. This mistake here is a maximum of a 4 or a 5. So this is also what was determined in the Code of Points. And the ultimate goal is something that was really already a plan with the Dressage Handbook, is to be able to have videos at some point for each of those marks so that we can help in education of the officials. But again, this is not what it looks like today. But we're still working on the current one, so I'm afraid I cannot show it. So thank you for your attention on all these information points. So I'll just show you now a short presentation on upcoming exciting events. So Tokyo 2020, this is the presentation that our Director of Championships and Games, Tim Hadaway, gave at the General Assembly last November. So it's not as updated as the Tokyo Games are now, but it does give a good insight of what we can expect. So after 55 years, the Olympic and Paralympic Games now return to Tokyo, and we have now less than 200 days to go, or even much less than that. They will host 42 venues to deliver 339 events for 33 sports. So they're really working on delivering all the operational needs, also to leave a great legacy for the city of Tokyo. There will be 5 new sports at the Olympic Games: softball, karate, skateboard, sport climbing, and surfing. So we had the equestrian test event last summer, where eventing took place on the premises, and of course with eventing we could test the dressage and the jumping as well as the cross country. And we've learned a lot from it, and also helped much the venue development from there. Also to work on the heat countermeasures, and on the FEI website I really encourage you all to go and read all the documentations there, and we are constantly updated also on the running up to the Olympic and Paralympic Games. We've learned a lot on the flow management, of course, also of the horses on site. The premises for equestrian look amazing. They're huge. All the stables are air conditioned. They're state of the art. It's really something very special that they are building over there. So we can really much look forward to them. They're also working hard on building the team to deliver the Olympics, all the volunteers, and also we're very happy to welcome here scribes who will be also with us during the Olympic and Paralympic Games. And all the logistics process between the different venues. Of course, for eventing, there's the extra logistics behind bringing all the horses to the cross country, which is not at the Equestrian Park. Ready Steady Tokyo was the official brand name for all the test events, and there are still test events running for different sports all the way up to May this year. They also worked a lot on the fan base and on, of course, the little persons there. They're also now, of course, working on getting all the volunteers. I think they got more than 200,000 applications for the volunteers there. They're also doing a lot of live site venues across the whole Japan to bring the excitement of the Tokyo 2020 across the whole country. And they started, or they will start actually in March, a torch relay from the Fukushima, lighting its way across Japan's prefectures also. And they've now opened also a Japan Olympic Museum. Ticket sales are also ongoing, of course, so there's a lot going on in Japan ahead of this. And I hope that what's going on for the moment with virus and others won't be any issues. But for the moment, it's all going well on that side. The Athletes Village is also now soon finished. It was still under construction last summer, so we haven't seen it yet. And after being temporarily used for the games, the residential buildings will be renovated and sold as apartments together with newly constructed tower blocks. So here you see the different venue, so the Equestrian Parks, Sea Forest, where the cross-country will take place, and then the Olympic Village. So we're also now working on all the transport facilities for the Olympics and for the Paralympics, because traffic in Tokyo can be quite a challenge. So this is a big plan that we're working on. This is just a plan of the Equestrian Park, which is owned by the Japanese Racing Association. Wonderful premises, really. Everything is there for the comfort of the horses and the athletes and the grooms. So also we'll have accommodation on site. The footing is really, really good. It's going to be very hot and humid. That's going to be the challenge there. We're trying to put everything in place to make it as comfortable as possible for everybody. But really, the running up to the games really prepare for really hot and humid conditions. This is an idea of the stables, all air conditioned. It was interesting because when we got there, everybody said, oh, it's, you need them cooler, it's so hot out there. And as you get there, you get used to the heat. Well, you know it more than we do in Europe here in Australia. So slowly but surely they were asked to put the, air condition a bit less in the stables as well, but it's really, really comfortable. This is just a picture of the Sea Forest cross country here, which is also going, it's also the island where the venue for rowing and canoe sprint competitions will take place. It's an amazing venue with a beautiful view on the city from there. So I think the photographers and journalists will really enjoy it being out there as well. This is a picture of the arena when we were at the test event last summer, but now all the public stands are built around it. It looks really quite amazing. And the tower you see there, that's the judges' tower, also where the JSP will be sitting, with a perfect view of the arena. The team, so we have recently hired Annemiek van der Worm, who's now the manager for Dressage and Para-Dressage. Annemiek has great experience. She also was organizer at the last European Championships. And together with Alec Lohor for eventing and Cesar Hirsch for jumping, they really had a great team together. And so we work really in a positive way. I think Mary can testimony on that, who's our TD. But this is the team we're working on ahead of the games. An idea of the schedule. So the first ones to go will be the dressage, followed by eventing and then jumping. And then, of course, months later from the start of the Olympics starts the para-dressage competition. So we'll be all experienced by then, of course. But no, everything will go well for all the others as well. So a short update where we are now. We had our, what we call ORIS meeting in last November. This is a meeting where we check together with Swiss Timing and all the IOC people exactly. I mean, it's a 563-page document we go through with all the outputs. And we try to test each eventuality that can happen during the games, of going from a horse lame or horse sick, an athlete's lame, or athlete getting off the team, or something happening in the arena. So that was 5 full days of working on all the scenarios in the 3 disciplines. And there will be a similar meeting for para in April as well, going through all the scenarios, which is called the PRIS meeting for Paralympic Resource Information Systems. Training of the e-scribes, they went to some shows in Europe, and now they're here, also some of them at this show, and we'll go on with them all the way up running to the Olympic Games. The team and individual qualification slots were just sent out, both for the Olympics and Paralympics. Congratulations to Australia, with qualified teams for both Olympics and Paralympics. We're working also, of course, on all the broadcasting plans for both games and the appointments of all the national technical officials. So just for dressage, the next deadlines is for now coming up is mid-March, to confirm the use of all the allocated slots. And then, of course, the certificate of capabilities and nominated entries will be due on the 1st of June. And then 6th of July are the definite entries. And of course, the 24th of July, the opening ceremony at the Olympic Games. And for para-dressage, we've now just launched the bipartite commission invitation application process. There's still 3 slots to be allocated. The 2nd of March, we will notify all the NPCs in writing, so next week, about the number of allocated qualification slots, but they're already published on the website. And then confirmation will need to come back to us. Bipartite Commission invitation application will be sent also and reviewed by IPC and us. And then on the 23rd of March, confirmation will be sent out. And the deadline for the Tokyo Organizing Committee to receive accreditation application forms is 8th of May. And then 19th of June is the nominated entries and certificate of capability deadline for the Paralympic Games. And 3rd of August, the entry forms.